Your herbal remedies can be incredibly delicious. I think there's this common misconception that all herbs and their remedies and concoctions are pretty darn gross. And if you've taken herbal remedies, I'm sure that you've experienced some that are. Sometimes it's inevitable. But I also feel that the more we can make our remedies taste great, the better they're going to work. Because when they're gross, nobody wants to take them. And if you don't take them, they definitely don't work. So that's a problem. And we're going to talk about it on Friday. I'm doing a free class called How to Make Herbal Remedies That Actually Work and Taste So Great That People Will Beg You for More. So in the class, we're going to talk about some of the most common mistakes people make as they're getting into herbal remedies. So like making sure that they are actually going to do the trick. There's a little science to this, so we'll cover some of that. We'll talk a bit about how to not waste all of your money getting into making all of your own herbal remedies because it can get really expensive really quickly. And then, of course, we're going to talk about how to make them super yummy so people will actually want to take them. So it's a free class. It is happening on Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will have a replay for a limited amount of time if you want to just go ahead and hop in. Of course, I'd love to see you there live, but if you want to catch up over the weekend, you can do that too. All right, I'll drop a link in the notes here for this podcast, and I hope to see you in the class on Friday. Welcome to the Herbalist Path. If you love learning about the power of plant medicine and how to use it in your life, this show is for you. I'm Mel Butterspot, clinical herbalist, herbal educator, and your host. In each episode, you're going to hear me sharing herbal insights and knowledge from my 25 plus years of working with and learning from the plants. Plus, I'm going to share interviews with some of the most amazing herbalists, educators, farmers, and healers out there, all bringing their herbal wisdom here for you. Really, this show is all about continuing this movement to put an herbalist in every home and a healer in every community. Again, thank you so much for listening, and welcome to the Herbalist Path. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to another episode here on the Herbalist Path. I know that we are all in for a great treat today. I'm bringing back my guest, Elaine Shefff from Green Path Herb School in Missoula, Montana. And every time I have the pleasure of chatting with Elaine, of taking a class with Elaine, or just any type of connection I get with her, I always feel better. She just has this kind, calming, magnetic presence filled with wisdom. So why wouldn't I have her back on the show, right? So, Elaine, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I think that the topics we are going to flow into are so incredibly important today, and I couldn't imagine a better person to chat about with it than you. So welcome.
Oh, thanks, Mel. Thanks for such a kind introduction, too. That's very sweet of you.
I only speak from the heart. So there we go. And on that introduction piece, I'm sure there's quite a few listeners who maybe haven't heard your past podcasts or had the pleasure of learning from you. So if you want to share a little bit more about you and all that you do, now's your time.
All right. Well, I'll make it brief because I know we have a lot to talk about. But so I have been an herbalist pretty much my entire adult life. I went to college, got a degree in environmental conservation. And while I was in college, I was fell in love with herbs and herbal medicine. I had already been doing that and working with that and studying. But I decided I really wanted to do it as a vocation. And I call it a vocation rather than a job because I feel like it's most of us who are herbalists, we do it because it's way more than just it's not for the money. It's way more. It's for the love of what we do. And so it is my vocation, just as I'm sure it's yours, Mel. And So I started out, I went to the Rocky Mountain Center for Botanical Studies, and then I went to the Southwest School of Botanical Medicine. And then my partner at the time, who's now my husband and also an herbalist, we moved to Missoula, Montana. We opened an herb store, and we owned that store for 18 years and manufactured products and sold wholesale and retail and taught a lot of classes and saw a lot of clients and all that good stuff. And then after 18 years, we sold the store. And now we're upstairs from that store. And for the last 15 years, we have been running Green Path Herb School. So we teach full time now. And I also still see clients and I write a lot. I have written several books and I'm actually working on a new one, which I'm sure we'll have a conversation about at some point later. Yeah. And have 2 kids, 2 boys who are now young adults, and 2 dogs and a cat, and a little house here in Missoula, which we just absolutely love. Big herb gardens and lots of hiking and wandering around in the woods and stuff like that. So
I love it. I love how you and I both seem to have gotten into the world of herbalism with our deep passion and love for the planet. And, you know, with that comes love for people. And I think our topic today, Elaine was really great and shared an excellent article that's on her website, greenpathherbschool.com, by the way. And it's all about herbalism for social and environmental resiliency, is the title of her blog. And that's pretty much what we're going to talk about today with our deep experience and knowledge and passion combined together. So I'm really, really excited about that, especially as this world of herbalism continues to grow in exponential ways. I think it's unbelievably important. And when I got into the world of herbalism, I had been studying environmental and experiential education. I became a backpacking guide. I was just really passionate about connecting more people to nature and to the power of nature, because it had been the most amazing, awe-inspiring, healing thing I had ever done throughout my entire life as well. And as I was doing that, I started noticing more of these plants, and I'm like, oh, wait, these plants can help heal people, right? And so I've always had this belief that the more people we can connect to the world of herbal medicine, the more inspired they are going to be to want to take care of our precious planet. And I know you feel this way as well. And I want to open up this conversation in this realm and connecting that to what we are seeing today, because I think, yes, that is true. More and more people are like, oh, wait, this earth and how we treat it matters. And there's also this whole other entity that's like, oh, wait, people want herbs and I can make buttloads of money off of that. And I don't give a damn about the planet. And like,
right.
how do we as herbalists who have been in this field for quite some time help to inspire more people to want to truly care for the land as they're using herbs to care for themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I agree with you. Like, there are people who sell herbal products or who are involved in herbalism who maybe don't connect that to care for the land. And I think most herbalists do connect that. And most herbalists have actually a massive passion for the earth and the land and the plants and how we can be respectful, right, and stewards of the land. And so I agree. And I also think there are a whole group of people that kind of think they're doing that, or maybe want to be doing that, but maybe they don't know how, or maybe they're not quite there, you know. Mm-hmm. So, and I see that a lot with foraging, honestly. A lot with foraging here in Montana. I'll, get on like Facebook foraging groups and I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like I've really, it really can be, super sad to me to see kind of, people taking everything from an area or whatever. And, part of what I think about is like, we are one part of the web of life. we cannot survive by ourselves.
Right.
Plants are our original ancestors, if you will. Like, we would not be here without plants. We wouldn't even have oxygen, right? They were here long, like millions of years before humans were, or even animals, right? So, so just even that perspective that we couldn't be here without them, they provide food and medicine and oxygen and ecosystems, literally, like ecosystems wouldn't be here without plants. And so there's no way life would exist without them. And so I feel like from that perspective, we can kind of understand the importance. It goes way beyond how we can use them or what we get from them, way beyond that. And to think about it kind of as a web of life, right? That there are many parts and we're just one little part to that. We need that web way more than it needs us.
Yeah, I love that. You are so right. And what a great way to paint that picture for those that are out there listening to this right now. And I want to talk a little bit about first, let's break down what we're seeing on social media in the wildcrafting world. And we'll just, state what we're seeing because I'm seeing the same thing. And it also hurts my heart as well. And then we'll transfer into like, what does it mean to be a steward of the land and to truly care? And how can people maybe, maybe somebody identifies themselves out there like, oh my gosh, I went out and took this whole stand of plants, and maybe they can shift the way they do wildcrafting in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And we only know what we know, right? Like, I have regrets around what how I've harvested plants in the past. Absolutely. To be totally honest.
Yeah.
There are things that I would never do now that I have done in the past. And that doesn't feel good to me, and yet it's important to learn from our mistakes. And so that's something that I would really encourage. Like, if if you're hearing conversation or you're learning about ethical wildcrafting or reciprocity or whatever, and you're like, oh man, I didn't do that. I did that thing, and like, yeah. And now there's an opportunity to not do that. Or like, my favorite thing is like, the empowerment around like doing something about it, right? That we each have an opportunity to be socially and environmentally responsible, and to have our actions count towards a positive world in so many ways, and so there's great, like, there's endless opportunity to do those types of things. And I know we can talk a little bit about some of the ways that I think herbalists are have opportunities to do that, and even people who aren't herbalists but are just like interested in the natural world or go out walking or hiking or whatever it is. So lots of opportunities there for empowerment and betterment and adding to life and the web of life.
Yeah. So since you just said that, I was like, oh, well, let's talk about some wildcrafting ethics, but let's talk about the empowerment of the web of life. And as herbalists or just nature lovers in general, what things can we do? What kind of opportunities are out there for us to make a shift for the betterment of people on the planet?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of one of the reasons I wrote the article, is that I feel like, so many of the things that we're seeing right now kind of break my heart. And I think people can feel very disempowered. And so how can we do things that are hopeful and that matter, even if they just matter a little bit, even if they just matter in our local yard or environment or neighborhood or community, and there's just so many options. And so that was one of the reasons I wrote the article, because I was just thinking about all these ways, like, how can I contribute? How can I make a difference? And then I was like, boy, like every herbalist could do this. And I narrowed it to herbalism because I felt like there's so much conversation around the bigger picture, like what people can do in general. So I thought, why not like what herbalists can do specifically, right?
Yeah.
And so the first thing, and this goes, right along with what we were just talking about, is being stewards of the land, right? And how do we do that? And there's so many great ways to do that. Like, one of the things that I do when I go out on a hike or a walk is I will always like look for trash or, pick up things that shouldn't be there or some, like the other, last summer I was hiking and there was this beautiful wild rose, right, that was growing right by the trail. And someone must have like gotten scratched by it or something. And they had put this big piece of wood like on the rose bush, I think to probably keep it off the trail or whatever. But I was like, I could almost like feel that rose like being like, help, I'm hurting, and I just like, I was talking to a friend, we were hiking together and I walked by and I was like, wait a second, I got to do something. Just give me a minute. And I walked back and like took the log off the rose and was just like, kind of in my heart, like apologize, like, I'm sorry for that. Humans don't always understand like, or think. And I'm sorry. I apologize for our actions around that. I often feel embarrassed by human actions towards plants and how we treat them. And they're sentient. I know that plants have sentience. They have a life. Every single plant has a life of its own that is precious and important to it, right? Just like our lives are precious and important to us. And so to have that in mind, I think as we go, it can be really helpful.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned there, like you could feel the rose's feelings. And before we hit record, Elaine and I were talking about other podcasts that are fascinating. And one of them that we had both, like, she was saying, about to come up with the words for it. And I was like, she's going to say telepathy tapes. And she surely did. And in one of the episodes, I just got turned on to it. So I did listen to one about plants and how they speak and how we as humans can feel. And, right now I look at the sticker on the bottom of my computer screen or the top of the keyboard, and it says, if you listen, they will teach you. And it's so true. And I think maybe that there's not enough people out there opening up and really speaking about how these plants are live, living beings, and you can develop a real connection with them. And maybe that sounds woo-woo as all get out, but it is real. And I think the only reason it sounds woo-woo is because the scientists can't prove it,
Yeah, and I feel like we've lost touch with, that. But if we look towards indigenous cultures, they're like, yeah,
No.
duh, right? Like, of
Clearly.
course, clearly. And so I feel like, we have forgotten is how I feel, And so part of what herbalism can offer is like helping us remember like our true connection to the web of life and the natural world. And I personally feel like that's one of the reasons that humans have this, what I call like an empty hole, like a longing for something that we can't quite name, and that can lead to depression or feelings of hopelessness or feelings of disconnection and deep loneliness, right? And I personally feel like the reason that we feel that way is because we have forgotten our connection to the more than human world, right? That is so much greater and always there and deeply present. And we are part of that. And yet we've isolated ourselves in our minds and, in our homes and all of that from the natural world. And so that's one way that I feel like herbalism is like a bridge. Like I literally see myself, one of my jobs is to be a bridge for humans to get back to the natural world. And then if I can like working with clients one-on-one, if they have an experience with a plant that is healing to them, wow, that opens up that possibility of that reconnection. Just ingesting an herb, just smelling an herb, just like being near a plant, I feel like all of those have that opportunity of reconnection, to start that spark of reconnection. And then if we think about teaching about herbal medicine or having students working with people, writing books, podcasts, blogs, whatever it is, where people can start reading about that and going, that feels right. That feels like I'm drawn to that, right? That it helps us feel whole, like because we do belong to that. You know, we are part of that. And we've just lost our way. We've lost the realization. It's not that we aren't connected. We've just forgotten that we are, you know.
Hearing you speak about this is making my heart and entire body so happy and alive with chills, because you're so right. Like the connection we have, the web we are all so deeply connected to is the World Wide Web. And while there's some blessings to that, it really has made us so much more disconnected to real life. Real life that we know for a fact will always be there for us, doing its thing. Whether we'll be here or not is a whole nother thing, but it will be here. And, you know, nature isn't just going to suddenly crash tomorrow and everybody's offline and can't, you know, go touch a plant, right?
Yeah.
So that is so important and so beautiful. And it really takes me back to the root of how I got into this work myself, that like deep desire to connect more people to nature. And what a fabulous role to have in the world of herbal medicine. Like,
I agree. I mean, I feel so, not only do I love, like I would never want to do anything else. I absolutely love my work, and I really don't call it work. I call it more of like a vocation, but
yeah.
I feel so honored, you know, to do the work I do, like so grateful and so honored.
Yeah.
And I just, I mean, and I know there's lots of people that do different work and they love that work and they feel like it's a calling or, you know, something that really deeply matters to them. I'm not saying herbalism is the only way to do that, but for me, it feels like it is my way, you know, and it just feels deeply rewarding. And,
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And it makes sense that you're speaking about it from herbalist perspective. I mean, you are a lifelong herbalist, at least adult lifelong, you know, probably you were already there as a youngin', but maybe weren't quite as aware. That's kind of what I think about on my journey and my path. Like, wait a second. I say that I started this in the late 90s, but what about all those cool mud pies with the plants I was making when I was 7? You know,
Right.
was that it too? And I just didn't know because my family wasn't into it. You know, they were part of that generation that, you know, it was basically washed upon us to erase that connection.
Yeah.
So that we would become dependent on other systems that are not as strong, robust, and eternal as nature and that web. So that is really beautiful. Okay, so maybe somebody's listening to this and they're like, that's really cool and all, but like, what do you really mean? How can I deepen my connection with a plant? Because you talked about how, you know, tasting them or smelling them. Like, I'm at a point where I have certain plants, I can think of their name and I can feel the effects of that plant in my body, like flow through my body in the most beautiful ways. That's freaking epic, right? Like, what a cool gift. But maybe somebody's not there yet, right? How can they foster that connection? What can they do?
I mean, I think about, well, there's lots of different ways to do that. One of the ways that I love to do that is to grow plants, so to garden. And so to me that, well, there's two. So one is going out in nature and like visiting. So I consider myself, like if I'm hiking or whatever, I consider myself like a visitor. Not that I don't belong to the natural world, but to that little portion, I'm a visitor. And I will go and visit the plants in their homes is what I say. And so I love to like go and see like, oh, who lives near who and which kinds of insects like who and which birds. And so I'm just like deeply watching the world. And I'll go to the same trails around this area like through all seasons. And so I'm know like, oh, this is when the balsam root comes up. And with the balsam root comes the, you know, these bluebirds are coming back to the fields then. And right after the balsam comes the larkspur, you know, and like, so I have this feeling of like a deep connection that I have just developed over time with the land near where I live. And that connection is like love and reverence. I mean, it feels like I adore the land that I live on.
Yeah.
And I would do a lot to protect it, so that feels like the more we know something and love it, the more we're invested, right?
Yeah.
So there's that natural part. And then there's the gardening part for me, which is all about like getting to know. So that's where I harvest most of my plants is from my own garden. And I feel really good about that because I do wildcraft, but I'm very selective and very thoughtful about, very abundant plants or weedy plants is mostly what I'm wildcrafting. But my gardens, I grow, what I can and quite a bit. And I love, I just did this winter plant ID class for my herbalist certificate program. And I was talking about knowing like from a seedling, literally the cotyledon, the first two leaves that come out that are like the seed leaves, right before the real leaves come out. At this point, I can go into my garden and look at cotyledon leaves and be like, there's sunflower or there's motherwort or there's catnip or, whatever. And so I've been doing it for so long that I feel like and it wasn't something I just trained myself to do. I just literally watched over and over, season after season, right? And getting to know those plants in that way from like a seedling all the way to like when I would harvest or they would, be years old and if they're perennial, right? That has been an amazing way also and to see and just to get to know them. And I think of them, and you probably do too, Mel, but like a lot like friends, right? They are, they each have their own personalities, if you will, and they're the types of, if we're thinking about gardening, like the types of places I'll watch them move around the garden, like their seeds will go to different places or they'll come up in different locations, right, through their roots. And I love to just watch like, oh, you like it more over there in the sunnier part or, whatever it is. And so it's like, just getting to know them better in that way, that has been really amazing. And I think about that, like, especially that kind of, going out and like visiting the locals, if you will, it's really bioregional herbalism, right? Which I'm a huge fan of, like this idea that we really get to know the medicinal plants that grow around our area. And I like the weedy plants just as much as I like the native medicinals. Weeds have their own, like I could go on about weeds because they're medicinal weeds because I'm like, so in awe of them. Yeah. They're so resilient and so they have such life force, and what they do as pioneers for the soil and that kind of thing is just really beautiful. But like having that bioregional herbalism, not only is it so important for like not transporting medicinal plants around the world, right? And we can get, I'm not talking bad about like Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine or any of those medicines far away. Like I am deeply, those are beautiful and have such deep roots. Like I have a lot of respect. And I am much more interested in the plants that grow where I grow because I feel like there is, I can have a deeper relationship with them and deeper connection to them. And I know kind of like I can go out in the wild and be like, there's not that much of this plant around here. Probably not a good idea to harvest it. Whereas if I'm getting an herb from China, no idea. I mean, I can research it, but I can't go out and look and say, there's really not much of this plant. I don't think we should be using it, Or this has been a hard season. There's been a lot of drought or way too much water or like bad conditions for that plant, that species. So I'm going to leave it be this year. It's not the right time to gather it. So those are the things that I feel like I trust, like locally, I can look and see and feel very good about my decisions around how to interact with those medicinal plants because I am where they live,
Yeah, I have so much to say on everything you just said, like from the connection to bioregional herbalism to watching your little plant friends popping up in the garden and them really being friends and having connection to the land. Like you spoke about visiting certain trails all the time throughout the year and being able to observe the life cycles of the plants out in their native habitat, usually native, sometimes not. And it really brought me to something that has specifically happened for me, because I also have a few trails that I visit 5 to 7 times a week. And it's so much fun for me to be like, oh, yay, the Oregon grape flowers are coming up, or, whatever is happening. And I have a trail in my backyard on this beautiful mountain river. I'm so grateful to be on. And there has been this certain section where there's some Oregon grape and a bunch of blackberries that are right on the side of the river. This beautiful little stand of Oregon grape that I have visited almost daily for the last almost 7 years. And last month, we had some pretty heavy flooding on the river, and it took away like a good 25-foot chunk of land in this area, many trees as well, and this Oregon grape stand. And I can go back in my phone camera roll and see like different times of year where I'm taking videos and pictures of this beautiful Oregon grape at different phases of its life. And it came up in one of my Facebook memories the other day, and I was like, my friend is gone. And I know that's a pattern of nature, but that's also that like real true friend connection that I think is so important. And that importance, I think, of what you just spoke about also in the bioregional herbalism piece and being a true steward of the land is having that ability, not only the ability, the discernment, the compassion, the respect to come to an area where there is a plant that you're like, hey, I know that's a really great medicinal plant. And I can see that now is not the time to harvest that plant. This is something I've always taught my daughter since she was wee little. Like, you ask a plant before you decide to pick it, even if it's the little daffodil in the spring popping up, And yeah, I just think that is really, really important. And one thing that I see a lot in the new wildcrafting community today is like, oh, there's this herb here. I know that that's that herb. I'm going to take it all. Yay, me.
Yeah.
I have children. I have a child who may have children. I'd like those plants to be here for her too. And that's so, yeah. Let's touch a little bit on that. Some of the ethics that can go behind wildcrafting today, because I know there are so many people that are very excited about it. And I think that's beautiful. Yeah. And I'm going to let you riff on it. And then I'm going to say that I feel like there's a few rules that maybe have changed since when I first learned. But I want to hear you speak on some wildcrafting ethics first.
Yeah. So, and this is I literally teach every program that I teach. We teach about this because I feel like it is essential, right? So if I'm showing people plants out in the wild, or I'm talking about the ethics, and that is a 3-hour class that I do that is, accompanies every single class that I teach around, because it's just so important, right? Because like you said, and it's not, yes, it's about wanting the plants to be here for future generations. And it's also, to me, it's about, and I said this before, but I'm going to say it one more time, like every single living thing has its own life. And I know that it's like, well, yeah, that's why it's alive. But I don't feel like we really think about that. And especially with plants and maybe insects as well, but plants, they have their own lives. They have their own experiences, right? And so think about just like, well, I don't know. It's not a good example because people do that anyway. They kill, whatever, like other things too, and don't ask. So, but so one of my first suggestions about wildcrafting is, first we look. You can look with your own eyes and say, this is not a good spot. this is not a good time, or I shouldn't be harvesting that plant, right? I think about the environment that a plant grows in. If it's growing in like a deep forest that's old growth or whatever, that right there is gives me pause, right? Yeah. So I think about around here, we have red cedar, Thuja placata, and these beautiful old growth forests that where trillium grow and I would harvest Thuja leaves because they're giant trees and you can only reach a little bit, and I would harvest some of those. I would ask first, listen for an answer, leave an offering. An offering can be a simple prayer. It can be a song. It can be something like I used to, I hope this is kind of personal, but I used to bleed when I menstruated I'm done with that now, but I would bleed in a mortar, like and then I would let it dry, and then I would grind it up, and I would use that menstrual blood as an offering to the plants. And so when I went out, I would offer, if I was going to wildcraft, I would offer some of that powdered blood to the plants. You can, sometimes now I'll offer water or a prayer or a song, or sometimes I'll pick up trash, or, it depends. It depends on the area. Like, what does it need?
Yeah.
Or how can I be of service here is my question. Mm-hmm. How can I serve that piece of land, right?
Not just take.
Yeah.
Reciprocity.
And to me these days, I'm much more interested in how I can serve as opposed to what I can get in return. What I get is that feeling of service that I love, that I'm contributing in some small way. That brings me great joy.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I just covered a lot in a little bit of time, but that idea that like, sometimes I don't ask a plant. If I go and I'm like, oh, this is not appropriate to harvest here or whatever, I don't bother asking. It's kind of like going to someone who has no food and going, have you got any food for me? Like, don't ask. That's my, like if your brain knows, if you can tell it's not a good idea, don't even bother to ask. Just say, I'm not going to do that. Of course, I'm not going to do that. And how can I help?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then if we're sure it is a good idea, nothing's been sprayed. There's abundance there. There's that local abundance, right? Then I think about sitting down, calming down, grounding, right? Just like sitting on the earth in front of the plant. I usually close my eyes, breathe deep for a while, just kind of get to a really still, calm place. And then I ask, and I usually just ask in my head and say, is it okay? Can I harvest some of you? And I speak to that plant kind of as a representative of its species. And so I'm not asking that individual plant. I'm asking for permission to wildcraft the species in that particular area. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's just a feeling like it feels really good. Sometimes it feels bad. And if it feels bad, that's a no to me. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes the plant, like literally, I feel like does a little happy dance, kind of like, like it's like, yes, I'm right. And that is one of the most humbling experiences to me, is to feel like plants are actually excited to help us. Like they want to do that. They're willing to literally give up their life to help. Like, I am so humbled by that. I am so grateful for that. And I just, it brings me tears to my eyes. It is so precious and so generous, And then I think about like, if we take advantage of that generosity, like that just really feels so bad to me. Yeah. It feels kind of shameful, And so what does that mean? Like, what would it be like to take advantage? And to me, when I wildcraft, what I want to do is I want to look back at a stand of whatever I'm harvesting, and it's like no one has been there. Yeah. like you can't tell. There are so many of those arnica flowers left, or there's so many of whatever that literally you can't tell that I was there and harvested. That's my goal. So, I was originally taught take 1 in 10, but that leaves, in the end, that leaves 9.
Yeah.
And that's not enough, in my opinion. So, and it really also depends on the species. Like, so it's not just about wildcrafting the same plants in the same way. And I know that's always stressful for my students because I feel like they're like, oh, but how do I know, which one I can harvest more of, or which one I should harvest less of, or which one I should harvest not at all, right? And part of that is you got to learn, like, how do they propagate? How long lived are they? When do they start flowering or not? Or how long does it take for seeds to sprout, and how do they do that? And I know that can feel super overwhelming as a new harvester, but do it one plant at a time. So we think about like, oh, I want to go and harvest Oregon grape, for instance. How does it grow? How long does it live? Where does it, where am I within its range? So you can get on that USDA website, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and you can look at the ranges of different species of plants. And that's something, so this is something that I wanted to actually mention. I feel like I'm a little bit all over the place, but so
it's great.
Okay. So the edge of a plant's range is literally like where it's just getting, for instance, too hot or too cold in the winter, or not enough sun or not enough shade or whatever, right? So it's like the edge of where a plant can survive. And those are the ranges, so if we look on a map, it's like where the range ends, basically, right? That is where the greatest diversity is for that plant species genetically. And it's also where those plants have the most resilience. And right now, with climate change and global warming, that is super important. So if I'm on the edge of a plant's range, I don't want to harvest it there. And the reason for that is because they're the ones that are going to survive. They're the ones that are going to push those edge boundaries and be able to do that because they're already living on the edge. So if it gets too hot or too cold or whatever, they're there to propagate the species right there, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I feel is really crucial right now with what's happening with our environment and medicinal plants. They're traveling, right? They are traveling. So on the edges, they're traveling. And we need to make sure they can do that.
Absolutely.
So that's things like replanting seeds or, right? Like helping them propagate, helping them, like, how can I assist?
I think that's such a
travel around. We do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's such an important thing to bring up. And I love that piece of also replanting seeds. Like, how can we help them thrive as they move along? Okay, and so you also already briefly mentioned the one thing that I feel like is one of the rules that I learned in my younger days of wildcrafting from my mentors and teachers. And it was all about like how much to take. And this goes back to what you were saying, what we see in Facebook groups. And I think this is also another really important thing to speak about. You were talking about 1 in 10. I think at one point I had learned a quarter of a stand, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and what has shifted and why it needs to continue to shift.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are, more people are interested in herbal medicine. More people are foraging a lot. That's getting super popular. And so, I talk to my students a lot about this feeling that we have of a lack of abundance, right? And so that, like, I remember when I was in my herb schools, when I went to Michael Moore's school, for instance, he would talk about a plant and you would just be like, oh my God, I love it. Like, I want some of that, right? And then he'd be like, all right, go get it. He never, and I'm not talking bad about him. I love Michael Moore. Like, he was so amazing and such a precious, precious human being. But he never talked about like wildcrafting ethics that I ever recall. And
Right.
although I know he had concerns, but so he would be like, all right, go. And people would just go off in different directions and go looking for that plant, right? And there was this feeling of scarcity, and there was this feeling of like, am I going to get any, or am I going to get enough, right? And that feeling is something that I feel like propels a lot of people to take more than they need or more than they should, right?
Mm.
So I talk about that a lot in my classes, and just like, just that's something to notice and just be like, yep, I'm feeling that feeling of scarcity. Like, am I going to get enough? Am I going to, whatever. And sometimes we harvest as a group and we share, right? Or sometimes I just say like, if you're out wildcrafting and you're feeling that way, just notice it and go, yeah, there's that feeling. It doesn't mean that I should harvest more. It just means I have that feeling, right? And it feels uncomfortable. Fine. It feels uncomfortable. Yeah. We worry about scarcity and that there's not enough abundance, right? And that's how we've been taught, is that there's not enough for everyone.
Mhm.
And personally, I don't feel like that's true.
Right.
So, but if we overharvest and we take too much for ourselves and we hoard it, if you will, right, then there's not going to be enough for everyone.
Mhm.
And so can we be very aware and respectful of that, And Mel, I feel like I'm missing something that you asked, like part of the question.
Yeah, so I want to just kind of give them more of a solid, not, I love what you're saying, but a solid numbers kind of, I had learned a quarter of a stand, but as we
Right.
progress on, you were talking about a tenth of a stand. And now as it's so much more popular in the world, that means, if you're walking by a stand and you take a tenth of it, then your neighbor Sally walks by that same stand and is like, oh, look, because you did a good job wildcrafting and you made it look like nobody's ever been there. Right? And then the next person comes. So just kind of obviously it's going to be so situationally dependent upon the environment, the plant, all of those kinds of things. But what kind of things can we think about?
So I always think about how rare a plant is, right? And there are some medicinal plants that I never harvest. Trillium is an example. There's one example. Its life cycle. And so the part of knowing, like people will say, well, there's lots of Trillium where I live. It takes about 17 to 20 years for that little tiny, beautiful, sweet flower to even bloom once, So like part of it is knowing the life cycle of each individual species. And I know that's a lot. And so I almost don't feel like there's an easy answer to that, Mel, because then some other things that I consider is like, what time of year is it? So we have like bears here, we have lots of wildlife and lots of, birds and bears and other animals that need a lot of those plants, right? That are using them for forage or medicine too. Like animals besides humans use plants as medicine. They're eating those medicinal plants too.
How else did we learn?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And so I consider the weather and like, if it's been hard on that species or the environment in general where I'm living. Like this year here in Montana, we've had almost no snow. We've had days in like the 40s, and that is unheard of here. I'm freaking out about like, I have never seen the weather like this. It's scary. We have plants leafing out. It's insane. So what that tells me is all of our plants, and especially like our shrubs and trees and things like that, are already very stressed. I had my elderberry. I just planted an elderberry in my, we turned our front yard into like a food forest, permaculture food forest. And the elderberry started leafing out. And then it froze really hard. And I was like, I don't know if it will survive or not. But I know if it does survive, it's going to be very stressed. It's like not going to be doing well because it already put a bunch of energy into trying to leaf out, right? So that's the kind of thing, like I'm aware of the weather. I'm aware of what other animals around the area might need or want. Food, shelter, medicine, what other plants. Sometimes we have parasitic plants that are like growing on other plants, like Betony pedicularis. So who is involved with who, right? So I guess and maybe you have an easier answer, but to me, I feel like there's so many inputs, and I'm sure I'm not aware of many of them even at all because we just don't know, we're, that I feel like I need to err on the side of caution and be really thoughtful. So trees, I tend to feel are in general more resilient. They can give a few leaves or, needles or flowers or whatever it is that we're using of those particular species if they're big, right? I try not to harvest from saplings or younger trees. Same with shrubs, older big shrubs, right? We can prune, and I like to prune them for health. I think about like looking at it and going, which branches are rubbing? How can I help this shrub or this tree, if I'm using bark, to actually thrive better? How can I help it be healthier? So maybe I can prune some of those things where there's going to be an injury, if it keeps rubbing with the wind or, whatever it is. So it depends on the species I'm harvesting and how abundant it is in my area, and if I'm on the edge, and if it's an annual or a perennial or a biennial, so I hate to say, like, I feel like there isn't an easy answer. I mean, maybe you have something I haven't thought of that I would love to hear if you have some thoughts around that.
No, you're right in that there is no easy answer. There's so many different nuances to take into play because, again, each of these plants are living beings. They all have different environments, different things, like we as human beings have different things that have conditioned us to be who we are now today, right? Plants are going to be similar. We do have to think about the weather patterns. I'm in Oregon, and we're also like, holy crap, there's no snow. I live in a ski resort town. People are bummed, and all I can think about is like, oh my gosh, this summer is going to be so scary. What's going on with my plant friends, and what's going to happen with wildfires, and so on and so forth. So many different variables. And both you and I came to this conversation where you saying, 1 in 10. And me saying I learned 1 1/4. And as you guys are going out there, remember that both Elaine and I agree that leaving 9 is not enough in a stand of 10. And especially when you're taking into considerations the growing patterns of these individual plants in the stand. Another thing I like to think about here is how often people are like, oh my gosh, I just saw that plant and I just learned about it and I'm going to take it. I very rarely will ever take from a plant that I have just met for the first time.
Yeah.
I will return to that space again next year and the next year and observe what's happening in the land around them. Also, another one little piece is that observation piece and recognizing not only that the plant that you are hoping to gather, but looking at all of the plants and what's happening around them. This is one of the first things Cascade Anderson Geller taught me on a plant walk, one of my first ever plant walks with another herbalist. And she just had us stand and observe in this particular space. And we're looking, I can't even remember what plant, but I do know that 10, 15 feet away, there were other plants in the middle of the summer that were just dead and brown. And she's like, well, why is that? Are there chemicals in the ground that killed this plant? Like, do I really want to take this other plant that is right next to something that could have been killed for a reason that may be going into the plant that I am trying to gather? Anyways, I think we both come to the conclusion that there is no one solid answer, but that being aware and conscious and having respect, for the land and for that plant. And it's not just gimme, gimme, gimme. What can you do for me? How can we help one another?
And how can we can we be curious enough before we harvest something that we might learn more about its life cycle and, how it propagates, how it reproduces and what it needs, right? And then, like you said, that's one of the things I love to do is go back year after year and look at these different stands in different places and see like who likes to be near each other, but also like, how are you doing this year? How are things going? And comparison to last year and the year before, right? And so I have a Wildcrafting notebook where I write things down and I track year after year, and you want to track things like the weather and, because if it's been a hot, dry spring, they might come out earlier, if it's been really wet and cool, they're going to come out later or whatever. So there's a lot of inputs, right? And we can, just observe to understand better. And it's crazy, like after observing for a while, the subtle things you start to kind of notice, right? And I love that. Like sometimes I don't, like the other day I was hiking with a friend and I'm like, I'm really worried about the trees. They're starting to bud. And she's like, how do you know that? Like I don't see any difference. And I was like, how do I know that? Like what is it specifically about looking at the trees as I'm hiking or walking and going like, something is not right here.
Yeah.
I'm concerned. And so there's like subtle nuances, and you think about it and you're like, well, yeah, it's been too warm and we haven't gotten enough, whatever. It's not cold enough. Right. But there's that. And then there's this visceral, like knowing of like, ooh, this is not right. Like I'm worried. And not everyone feel, like that does sometimes take deep observation and then paying attention, and so, yeah, it's like being an herbalist or knowing how to wildcraft well or whatever, like those things develop over time too, And as much as I remember being a young herbalist and being like, I want to know it all right now, like some of it does evolve over time.
Yeah. It's such a valid point. And that piece of, I want to know it all right now. I think every single herbalist has been there, and I see it happening consistently across the board on social media. And when I listen to our conversation right now, it's very easy for me to understand, feel, see, deeply resonate, and agree with everything that you're saying. And there's one little thing that comes up for me that I have this fear of, like you and I've been in it for over 25 years, you even longer than that, and develop those relationships. And we are in this instant fix society. We are in this world where people are like, nope, I'm going to go do it right now. I don't care what those old ladies said. I don't have the damn time for it, and I want it right now. And so that's where I want to be able to give those people, if they're listening, I get you, feel you, been there, done that, and 100% understand it. And I wish that there were one solid guideline that we could give, other than take your time and get to know the plants, get to know the land, and develop that connection. Oh, here's a great guideline. Find your weeds.
Yes. Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yep.
Yeah.
And be careful of them being sprayed, right? Like that's something you want to watch for. But weeds are a great place to start wildcrafting, whether you're foraging or whether you're using, looking for medicinal plants. And some of those are crossovers, right? Like dandelion. But absolutely. I love that. Yeah. I think that's a great, great idea.
What are some of those weeds that we can start with,
Again, it depends where you are, but like dandelion is a fabulous example. I think about burdock. I think about Oh, like our naturalized kind of weedy species, like around here, motherwort is one of those that, is a prolific seeder and grower. It's not native to the area. I think about St. John's wort around here, which is sprayed a lot, but it's considered a noxious weed, right? And it's a beautiful, amazing medicinal. And so, one of the things that you can do is you can download, like do a search for noxious weeds in your area and look at, are any of those medicinal, right?
Yeah.
And then be very careful where you wildcraft them. And one of the things that I like to do is I talk with landowners around the area. And that's a lot of times where I'm bringing students. And it's also a lot of times if I'm wildcrafting, I'm doing it on private land that people are just like, yes, please come. And, I never do anything with this acreage I have. And, and then you can say, has it been sprayed? What's the history? They know the history, right? So that's a really nice way to start. And I love that because sometimes you're actually helping out. Like if you're, like we used to do this, there's a local park here that's just wild and it's so beautiful. It's my favorite park. And there's all kinds of like non-native medicinals in the park from people's gardens and stuff. And it's this huge wild park. And we used to take students there with the permission from the city, and we would harvest non-native medicinal plants there, and it helped them because they wanted natives growing in the park. And it helped us because we got to harvest medicinal plants that were around, escapees basically from people's gardens, like catnip and motherwort and burdock and dandelion and stuff like that. So you can, like, there's a lot of possibility for actually, and that's a way, again, that we can contribute by harvesting those non-natives that might be sprayed otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Love that idea.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Okay. All of this being said, one thing that has repetitively come up that I think we could even take another angle on is the relationship that you are building with communities of plants. And as herbalists in this challenging world we are in today, like the world is very hard right now. And what can we do as herbalists who are not only developing our communities and connections with plants, but what about developing our communities and connections with human beings? And oftentimes we as herbalists, when we see people and plants and the planet struggling, I know for me, I want to come in and save the world. I want to just be the one maybe not the one, but I really want to do a big chunk of my life's purpose is to make this world a better place. And I think that there are so many other herbalists that feel that way. And so what can we do to help our communities and go through challenging times like this?
Yeah, that is beautiful. And that's that social. So we've talked more about that environmental piece, right? Mm-hmm. And how do we help with environmental resilience? And then how that other piece is like, how do we help with social resilience in our communities? And I feel like there are so many beautiful ways to do that people are doing all over. And it just like, it's so heartwarming to me to see people coming together in communities. Mm-hmm. And there are some ways that are relatively unique that herbalists can do that or plant people can do that, right? So some of the things that I do, and I bet you do some of these same things, Mel, but I think about like, I love to share plants with my students, with my neighbors, with basically anybody who wants medicinal plants. I'm like, come to my garden, let me share, right? Mm-hmm. So I have, for instance, there is a LGBTQ group of people here in Missoula who are working on having medicinal plants. One of them is a new herbalist and some of their friends, and they're working on setting up like community support free, basically like a free clinic, right? Mm-hmm. So I found out about them. I'm like, hey, please come harvest from my garden. Let me give you plants. Let me give you seeds, right? Can I teach a free class for you? how can I support your efforts, right? So part of it is reaching out to other people in the community who might be doing things or thinking about doing things or whatever, where I feel like, how can I support? How can I help? Right? Can I give you a discount do you want to come to one of our classes? Can I help you do that? Can you, do you want me to come and teach for your folks? Like how can I, do you want me to do a class that's paid and I'll donate the money to you? Right. So there's different ways that we can do that within our community. I think free classes, just, letting folks come and get some information about herbal medicine can be really, really helpful. So that's something that even someone who is a new herbalist can offer simple things. How do you make a salve, right? How do you make a tincture? Let's go on a walk and we'll look at foraging dandelions and let's make some, a dandelion tea or whatever it is, right? Focusing even on a single plant that people can use that's abundant around your local area, right? I have a ton of seeds from my garden. Every year I harvest seeds and I give them to our local seed library that's free. People can come for free and take the seeds. So there's like all kinds. Actually, the woman who runs it goes to like the national seed library events. And she's like, we have more medicinal plants than any other seed library I know.
Yay.
So, yay, like just free access, right? What else? I guess, think about vulnerable communities and how can we help? So whether that's, so we're members of the Herbalists Without Borders, right? They are an amazing organization that help reach out with really on the ground help for communities that are struggling greatly. So whether it's like an environmental disaster or something like that, how can we help, right?
Yeah.
So we could become members of Herbalists Without Borders or members of United Plant Savers. Those are both great organizations that do really amazing work connected to herbalism and social or environmental responsibility, right? And how we can contribute. So things like that. I think about, bringing things to unhoused individuals or your local community food bank, or like there's so many ways we can reach out, find something that a place in our community that doesn't have a lot, that needs help, and provide, even if it's little, or get a group of folks together and, be like, how can we, what do you need the most? How can we help? And to think about offering foot care. Okay. How can we help unhomed folks take care of their feet, for instance? Maybe we can make some salves. Maybe we can make some foot baths. Maybe we can, I have one of our graduates from last year does foot clinics she's a nurse, and she does foot clinics for unhoused people, like that kind of stuff. Like, what do you know? What do you love? How can you offer?
Yeah. I love that. There's so many amazing ways to help. And as I listen to you and somebody who also has fallen into this path of herbalism as my vocation and my way of making a living, how can an herbalist who also has to buy groceries and pay the rent and electric bills balance out serving and giving for free and also being able to pay those bills? Because I think that's a very, very important piece, because if we're stressed about how we're going to live because we're so busy serving, we're not going to be able to serve well. And so I feel like that's a balance. And I know that you have been in this world for a long time, so maybe you have a little bit of insight on how that can work for people.
Yeah. And so one of the things I always think about is like the ratio of effort to what it's going to do for people, And so, for instance, if I teach and I totally, I teach free classes in our community. If someone comes and asks me to teach a free class, I'm very likely to say yes. But now I ask questions first. So, like, how many people are likely to come? Because the more people, if I can find the venue where a lot of people are going to come versus like 3 or 5 people, I'm going to go for that bigger venue because more people will get the information and benefit, right? So I think carefully about how to spend my own time and resources that I feel will be will best serve my community, if that makes sense. And so rather than like, gathering a bunch of seeds and just seeing who wants them, I donate them all to the seed library. They have volunteers who, are able to get because I just give them in huge bags with like, the plant material around them. They winnow them and like, all that. So I know kind of what I feel works best. And sometimes it's trial and error to figure that out. Right. Even now still, but then I have my like things that I know, like, I feel like this really makes a difference. And so I'm going to do that. Even, if it takes time, and it does, like throughout the summer, I'm like, oh, that's going to seed. Like, all right, I'm going to take a half an hour. I'm going to go out with my, paper bag and just cut all the seeds and put them in there and put them in my garage. And I spend hours a year gathering seeds for the seed library. So it matters like, to not overspend yourself. Think about like, what I think about is what are the ways that can matter most? Right. Or what are the ways that I feel passionate about? Or what are the things I already do, like garden, that will help, instead of doing all of it, where's our skill set and where can we, make the biggest difference is what I think about. So I don't say yes to every time someone asks me to do a free class. Now I ask questions. I'm like, well, how do you advertise, and how many people do you think generally attend your classes? And, like, and if they're like, well, let's do it in a week, I'm like, no, let's do it in a month. So people have enough time to learn that this is actually happening. Right.
Yeah.
So I kind of have some parameters now of what I'm, my questions, and to kind of filter things out to figure out what I feel will be most effective. Most helpful.
And creating some boundaries and guidelines, it sounds like. Another thing that I've done that has been really helpful when I want to offer free classes is do a sliding scale, because oftentimes people do recognize the value in what you're doing. And there are people that are in a more financially fortunate position and are happy to cover those that are not. So that could be 0 to 20, 0 to 40, whatever it needs to be. Recognizing that is also really important, because sometimes you can go into these medicine making classes and you want everybody to walk away with really great medicine, but that also, it costs you. So being aware of that is really important too, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Sliding scale is great. And like we do scholarships and we do work trade. So I feel like outside of the money realm, there's other ways to like have reciprocity that are valuable,
Absolutely.
that are meaningful to me. And so, I like that too. And I try to think outside that box as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I told everybody in the beginning of this episode, we were in for a treat. There's been so many times throughout our chat right now that I've just been like, oh my gosh, my heart is so happy and you're making me smile so big. I don't know if it's ever going to get on video out to the masses, but just that connection and that deep love and care and compassion for the plants, for the planet, for the people oozes out of you, and it makes me so happy right now. So thank you very, very much. Like I said, I always love connecting with you, and I get to connect with you live and in the flesh. Like I get to hug Elaine soon. So excited for that because you are coming to my neck of the woods. You're coming to Portland, Oregon in April, right? And you are teaching an in-person class here. Yes. Tell us all about it.
So it is a reproductive sovereignty class. It is about the female reproductive system and the fertility cycle. So learning specifically about that, and then about herbs that we can use to terminate a pregnancy if we don't feel in a position to carry one out, and also herbs we can use to recover from like a miscarriage or an abortion as well. So, and it's a 7-hour with lunch class. So, it's quite in depth. It's a workshop whole day. And, this is kind of a special, bit of knowledge. It's not a bit, it's a focus of knowledge that, I feel right now is really, I just feel called to teach about it. So I've been working with folks for a long time with this issue, and I have started teaching about it over the last 4 years, only in person, not online. So, and it's a little risky to talk about. I'm always a little nervous to let people know about it, but I also feel like it's just something we really need to pass on this knowledge.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's such an important, large chunk of knowledge, especially now as we do see women's rights and healthcare trying to be stripped away from us in so many different regions. So it's incredibly important that more of the caretakers and the healers and the knowledgeable people that are here to help women through life and their health, that it's such important stuff. So I'm really, really excited for that. And if you guys are in the Portland area or hey, I want to go to the Oregon, Portland area, April, tell me the date again.
Oh, I think it's the 25th, I think it is. And it's all day. It's from 9 to, I'm looking on my calendar now, but from 9 to 4.
Yeah.
And you'll want to bring a sack lunch. So
awesome. Yeah, we'll put details to it. You can also reach out to Elaine about it at Green Path Herb School. I'm also super excited. You're going to be one of the guest teachers in the Community Herbalist Certification and Mentorship, sharing your depth of knowledge and wisdom in the world of herbs for pregnancy. And I am really excited to have another class with you because just the way you ooze your knowledge with such love, experience, care, and compassion is just an absolute delight to soak in. I'm really excited to be able to share that with our students here. I'm really excited to connect with you live and in person. And speaking of live and in person, I wish I were in Montana. Because you also have your year-long herbal immersion coming up.
Yeah, that's foundation.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, the foundations. Sorry.
Yeah. So that is a year-long program, and you can actually take it from anywhere. So it's online, but if you're here around the Missoula, Montana area, you can also come in-house to some classes. But they're live classes and there's video recordings. So anybody can take it from anywhere. And if you miss a class, you can get the recording. But it starts in March 14th, and you can look for that on our website. But it's a program, that goes over herbs for different, a bunch of different body systems. Mm-hmm. We have an ethical wildcrafting class, of course. We do a bunch of medicine making. So there's multiple classes on herbal medicine making. And then there's also monographs. So that's deep dives into individual herbs. And that is taught by myself and my husband, John Gojkovic, who's also an amazing herbalist and has been doing it a long, long time as well. So he and I kind of co-teach that program. We both teach different parts of it. And you can join us in March if you're interested, and you can just get on our website and look at Herbal Foundation. So greenpathherbschool.com. herbal
Awesome.
foundations. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Also, you can find her at Green Path Herb School on all the social media channels. We're going to link to her stuff in the show notes as well. So, are there any other parting words of wisdom or things that you would like our listeners to know before we wrap up this show?
I guess, my last thought, kind of going back to the plants on the edge of their ecosystem, is that in some ways I feel like herbalists are also edge people, right?
Mm.
That we tend to bring things to the table that and work to the table that is not really available in other places, right? And so, and I feel like for me personally, that feels really important because I feel like it opens up people to more different ways of healing, different ways of interacting with the natural world, different ways of being in the world and interacting with each other. And I think those things are really important right now. And Mel, I know you say a lot like we need more herbalists in the world, and I completely agree. We need, and being an herbalist can look in so many ways, right? There is no one way to be an herbalist, but I feel like kind of living on the edge of our culture is kind of how I see it, that we're kind of bridge that gap between the natural world and the human world, right? And I think that is essential right now, essential. And for us to be able to do that, even in our own homes and in our own lives, to have that connection, to experience and explore that connection, even if it's with a single plant, try a single plant, and eat it, drink it, taste it, be with it, grow it, like hang out with the live plant. It opens, it's almost like a portal, it opens us to things that our ancestors were doing, ways that humans have lived for, millions, literally over 1 million years. We have always been connected to plants. And so can we find our way back? And herbalists help do that, right? And plants are the ultimate teachers around finding our way back, in my opinion. Animals can do that for us as well, I feel. But that is so important right now. And
it really is.
It's a way to deeply connect and to support, but also to get support.
Yeah.
I encourage everyone to explore that.
I love that. What a blessing it is. You spoke about this earlier in the episode on what an honor it is to be doing this work now, today, here, forevermore. And I just deeply resonate with that. So thank you so much. Thank you for all that you bring to this world and the knowledge and wisdom that you share. I really appreciate and love you, Elaine.
And I love you, Mel. And thank you for all that you bring and do. It really, you also give me hope. And I really appreciate that. So
yeah, we need all the hope out there we can get.
Yes, you do.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Be sure to reach out to Elaine at Green Path Herb School. And if you are so fortunate to be able to embark in any of her classes, I know you will not regret it. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of The Herbalist Path. If you're loving this journey into herbal medicine, please follow and review the show. It helps more people find their own path with the plants. And if you know someone who could use this kind of support, please share this episode with them. So that way we can keep making herbalism spread like wildflowers. Also, a gentle reminder, nothing shared on this podcast is intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. This is all for educational purposes and a little entertainment too. but it is not a substitute for personalized care from a qualified health practitioner. Always do your own research, listen to your body, and when needed, partner with a trusted professional who honors both your intuition and your unique health journey. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep walking the herbalist path.